All right, it is Sunday, the weekend of February 18th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes last week, and let's start with the NQ as always. Price, what do you see there?
Well, on Monday, we did see all-time high, but from there, the rest of the week, it was basically a good down movement. We did have a really good hold after a lower low here on the 4-hour. You can see where this is the level where it held and produced the leg up. And so that's where we came back down to sweep. And then we came all the way back up, but the shorts still won out. And so we are really at a pretty good level here. What we hope to see is kind of a regain of this level here, a hold, and then we could see higher. If we don't get that, if we don't get up above 17,860, we really do kind of expect to see downward movement like that. It looks pretty good here. This isn't the worst look, but on the open, if it comes down here below 17,700, it is definitely looking more spooky, like it's going to lose 200 more points. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much see the exact same potentialities as you. First of all, I will say that, this was a pretty incredible, obviously the dump on Monday into Tuesday was massive. But, as spooky as it is, this was a pretty incredible retracement. This was a total regaining of everything that was lost, except for the previous, essentially, the failure that took us all the way down here. And so, like you were saying, that's the shorts went out. We couldn't close above that, so that's why we came down here. This hold looks really good, like you were saying, to potentially go back to the highs. Still, technically, this is a lower high, and this is a higher low in recent price action. So until we regain this level to gain here that you've marked out, we can't say for certain that we're going to go back to the highs. I would say that this really offered a great long opportunity, even though this hold was really nice. If we can close above here, like you said, we can take another long, potentially up to the upside. I think the best play, though, if this plays out this way, just given recent price action, is going to be if we end up losing this, like you said, at 700, look for a retracement back to that level, take a short there, and try to profit on this, making a new low, just because that would be... that at this point, at these levels, that looks like the best risk to reward trade on this chart. But until we kind of regain up here, I don't really see... It's tough to call until we see that kind of price action. One thing I will say is if we look at the daily chart on the NQ here, it does make a lot of sense why we held up here. This failure that we have marked out is what took us to the recent all-time high, and it was such a big resistance level that it makes sense why it's also now such a large support level. So this is going to be a pretty significant loss if we do end up losing that level, but also the perfect area to hold, which is why that's a great long. So those are all the things that I see on the chart. We'll just have to see if we regain or we lose the level that we're at.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
Let's go ahead and move on to the S&P. What are your thoughts there? Kind of a bit more of a constructive chart on the S&P.
Yeah, absolutely. Very similar, though. Let's see, this was Monday at that all-time high, and then it came down, but then we had a move back up, and it looked a little bit of this, I don't want to say, liquidity hunting on both sides, really, is really what that looks like to me. But it is interesting that it came up above this failure here, and we did gain that zone. We've come back below it, but it really does look like it could come back up above here, like this arrow we drew right before we started recording. Could come up and gain this level here at 5,040-ish, essentially, and go from there. If we don't hold that level, we definitely expect lower. And there would be a short opportunity at the level that is lost here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything differently. I do also think that it's very interesting that we actually got a higher close than the previous. We've made a higher all-time high than that. However, the actual candle closed higher than that, so that's interesting. We actually kind of gained that a little bit. So this higher low looks pretty nice. Still, like you said, we have to regain 5,040, or else we can't really say that we're going to see it go back to the highs again. that's probably an even better short than the NQ short that we talked about if that doesn't end up holding. So that's what we'll have to see. I mean, a lot of charts are in kind of the middle of the road on a lot of these price action levels. So we're just going to have to see what happens when we get to either side of these levels this week and, trade accordingly.
Yep. And, it could be low volume today and yeah.
Well, it's President's Day in the United States, so it's going to be a low volume day. Who knows if we'll even really get any meaningful price action today. But the rest of the week, even though it is a shorter week, got some interesting volatility events. I know NVIDIA is reporting earnings, and that's if nothing else going to send a lot of volatility in the market, because I think that's the AI love child. So be ready for that. Let's look at the RTY. Pretty interesting chart. So obviously we were kind of thinking that we wanted to see this hold and make a sort of a higher low. It actually ended up dumping like everything else and really kind of invalidating this idea that we'd drawn out there. So that ended up not holding out. But then like the other charts we talked about, we ended up regaining and even making a higher high here. So right now, as it stands, this is kind of at the perfect level to hold. We have a lower one marked out because that's the failure that sent us up. But the previous failure that sent us down is actually right there, right on that level. So right around, 2032-ish, something like that. And we tagged there briefly, and now we're holding there. If we can hold that area and move back to the highs, we can start taking out the short origin. If I look at the weekly chart here, this whole leg that sent us down, and then we lost it, and then retested that sent us all the way down to the lows during 2022. This is the key level that we've been talking about for some time now. If we can take this out and gain 2100, we can start to regain and make the moves back to the highs up north. It's 2400 or all-time high. So this is kind of a big level that we're at. It's going to be a decisive week. The weekly chart actually looks great. I mean, look at this hold, like all these wicks down that get bought up and moved higher. So right now it does look like things want to move up. We'll have to see if we can hold this range here and on the lower time frames and move higher. You see anything else?
It looks good for up. I do think it's gonna take out those levels that were previously lost. And I think it might just kind of go from right where it is here because it's got that look.
Yeah, and that drawdown, that candle on what is that, Tuesday, Monday? It's just the biggest slurp ever, right? Like everyone who breakout bought right there just got their stops hit. It probably a lot of people panic, sold their positions too, slurp up all that liquidity, and now we can move higher. So it makes total sense.
Right.
Gold, kind of a similar look we keep talking about, right? Looked like it wanted to lose levels, ended up making a lower low, and kind of broke our trend of making all these higher lows. But it ended up getting bought up and closed back in the range. It's like perfectly on the level, right, to gain right now. So if we can hold here, then we can move up back to the previous failure and actually attempt to make new, fresh higher highs. We had this idea that we would bounce off here. Last week, we ended up having this idea that we thought maybe we could hold here and then bounce to the highs. That idea got invalidated when we had this dump here, but now again, like we said, closing back in the range, longs are valid again at this point on the chart. So what we're looking at here again is just we want to hold this level, move higher. If we don't hold this level, we want to hold somewhere on these the highs of the consolidations on the way up. If we don't hold this level though, looking for shorts on gold. If we can hold this level and potentially move back to new highs. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see it right there, 2032 on the daily. That's where the failure took place. It's also a little higher as well, but that's $6 there. So it's this zone here. We want to see it kind of come up and hold the low, and then we can see it continue up. It's right in here. We want this range and lots of price in here, and then it can continue.
Cool.
And that would be the regain we're looking for.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Dow. Any difference there? It's kind of a more boring chart, I would say.
Well, it's doing exactly what I just said. It's at this exact same range here where we've come down below it, but then come back up to it, and now we're holding that range, and that's why we've seen them do these candles, which are seeking that liquidity at both ends, so that they can push the weak traders out that don't have a good system, essentially. And so I do think that while this idea was invalidated, we're exactly right back up in the range, and looking for something like that. And that's a very realistic look at what could happen. Now, it is a low volume likelihood, so it could come back down, but this is what we want to see take place, is regain this level just like we did here, and go for it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, when we're talking about low volume, I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't, like, any price action that happens, even on like the lowest possible volume, is still valid price action.
Right.
It's just that we don't expect that we'll see bigger moves on low volume, so it may take a little bit longer if we're going to have, tomorrow's going to be a holiday, futures won't be trading as much, so we might have to wait till later in the week to see these moves play out. But that's all we're talking about when we're talking about low volume. Let's look at oil. I think that when we talked about previously in previous weeks about this kind of level to gain, we gained it and then lost it. It still made a higher low, and then we've even recently regained that level and held it. So to me, it looks like kind of just more playing out of what we've been discussing about oil. It looks like it really wants to keep moving higher. It's consistently making higher lows and respecting the price action ideas that we're drawing out. I think that this thing is going to regain 80, and then at that point we're talking about moving back to the previous failure in the low 90s, and potentially moving even higher than that to the 100s like we've been saying. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely looks good for higher to me. You can kind of see this like ascending wedge here, right? So we don't necessarily care all that much about that, but it is interesting that we're seeing the lows continue to go up and the highs get restricted. So seeing a pop upward would make good sense right now. I think it's regained all the levels it needs to in order to do that pop, and it's ready to go for it right here, back up to 80.
Yeah, and it just slurped up so much liquidity and stopping everyone out on that drawdown too. I guarantee it. So many people got stopped on that.
Right. So everyone that had a good long down in this area was able to take profits, and now the smart traders were able to refill back down here.
Right.
After getting stopped in profit up here. So it's a great look. I think we'll see higher.
Cool, and let's talk about the dollar. The dollar's been volatile as well, kind of holding at the high of the previous range it broke out from. Really needs to hold here and move higher. If it doesn't, it needs to kind of use the low of the range and potentially regain. Otherwise, it looks like it could go lower. But we still haven't lost anything yet, in my opinion. I think that the dollar still looks like it wants to break higher, like we've been saying for a little while. We're finally seeing that sort of start to play out, but we'll have to see what happens this week. Do you see anything more on the chart that is kind of worth talking about?
No, I think it'll go to maybe go to the low 104s, and then we'll see a hold there, and then produce higher to 105 and above. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I really want to see that 105.8 taken out. I want to see this get touched and then kind of see what happens. That would make a lot more sense. I will say that it has been somewhat of a corrective move up. It hasn't been these big dumps like we've seen to the downside, but hey man, that's kind of how the drift of death works, right? It just keeps grinding higher. You think, well, it's going to dump at some point. It never does. There's no reason to be bearish on this chart. We're consistently making higher highs and higher lows, so I still think higher for the dollar for sure. What are your thoughts on the banks?
Take a look here. Very interesting. It didn't do, precisely what we were looking to, but it still used the levels we'd identified here with the yellow lines. I believe we were about here. So, everything before that would have been hindsight. But it's still using that level. It did invalidate this really bullish trade here where I wanted it to hold this spot. But it did immediately regain that without going lower than the previous low. So we just have a higher low and a higher high. And now
Right.
we've got this beautiful entry on this wick here that just took place right at on Friday in the morning, and this arrow looks like it's gonna bang out. So to make this a little bit more accurate, all we would do is that, and it's pretty accurate. So, but this is
But that's hindsight
this
now.
all
But yeah,
right,
I mean,
right.
the levels, like you were saying, that you pointed out matter. That short idea is now invalidated for sure, unless we lose it again and fail at the same level. But yeah, absolutely. I could see it coming back down again to 48 and giving you an entry, but that's kind of, you're rolling the dice there. I mean, you really needed to have your order already in there and get tagged
Right.
on Friday, because that is now a tested level to the upside. So what we really want to see here to confirm moving back higher is to regain this 50, we'll call it 50-50 here, level, and that's now essentially the level to gain. This is no longer the level to gain. This is just a failure. So we'll mark that white, and we'll mark this one the level to gain, and that makes this white line below the level to hold. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. Are we going to move higher, regain this level to gain, potentially test this and move higher, or fail here and move lower? But that's what I see. Just have to see what plays out this week. Unfortunately, it is going to be a shorter week, so who knows? But I still think we're going to have pretty big earnings reports that'll send volatility through the market. So definitely something to pay attention to. Anything else that we didn't talk about you think we should?
I really wish we'd have gotten another close right here. You see that wick right here?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't quite get a second
opened and
close
closed
up
below,
above.
so,
yeah. It's still not a bad look. So we could still put in and then you see what we're doing here is we're holding this low to gain this swing. So
Yeah, makes sense.
if we
you can
hold
see
this,
all over this chart. So if this level is, oops, sorry.
no problem. Sorry.
Control Z that.
Perfect.
Fine. If this level, which we know that is important based on what you just said, that's why we tried to gain there, failed, went lower. Then the high of that tried to hold, we went lower, regained, and now, right, even though we went below, we got bought up, and closed above that range. And now we're holding the low of that area. So we really kind of want to see this area that you pointed out hold. The level that we're still paying attention to is still at 48. But if we want to see confirmation on these lower time frames, we want to see this area hold for sure and just go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's it for the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review for this week. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub community Discord server. You can find it using our link in the description. See you next week.
Till next time.